Well, hello there, beautiful people, and welcome to another episode of How To. I'm Emmy. Don't forget to like and subscribe and ring that bell so you know when I post a new video. Today I'm going to paint a sea turtle. He is just the most adorable turtle I think I've ever seen in my life. Photo credited below. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about my tools and materials that I'm using today. First of all, I'll be using white, black, thylacyanine blue, raw umber, cadmium orange hue, and cadmium yellow hue. I'll also be using a different variety of brushes for whatever fits the situation. And that's really a preference that's up to you. I mean, all of this is your preference. The colors, the brushes, whatever you find helps your creative process. As you see here, I first decided to take the thylacyanine blue, a bit of black, and some white to lighten the color to make the background. Even though it's sped up, it's pretty clear to see that I took my time when painting this background. I used a rather large filbert brush to get the background because I like the texture that it puts on the painting. You can use whatever you want, whatever works best for you, but I started with the color as dark as I wanted it to be in the bottom right hand corner, and as I moved up, I added a little bit of white in order to lighten it and give it kind of this nice gradient effect, just to kind of seem like it's an underwater scene. Not to mention, fun tip, okay? When you paint in layers the way that I do, it is best to let the paint dry completely so that it's not tacky, it doesn't stick to your finger when you touch the canvas, so that when you go to add the next layer, you don't muddle up the painting that's underneath. I can't tell you how many times I've made the rookie mistake of not waiting just another minute longer for the paint to dry, go in with a nice new color, and watch that bottom layer come off with a single brush stroke. Good golly, Miss Molly, nothing is more frustrating than watching that happen, because once it happens, there's really nothing you can do about it. Once I finished with that, I decided to go ahead and pencil in my drawing. A lot of people have different methods to do this, but one way that I've learned really helps my painting process is to use colored pencils. The colored pencil I choose varies based on the color of paint that's on the canvas already. Here I chose a lighter colored pencil, which is kind of difficult to see on the screen, but in real life I was able to depict my image quite clearly. I try to avoid using pencils with really harsh lead, simply for the fact that when you go to paint, the lead can kind of bleed into the paint and sort of color your already existing color into a slightly grayer color, which is just something I choose to avoid entirely by using colored pencils, and I've really not had any issues since. I really try to stay away from vibrant colored pencils such as red because I feel like it can rub off pretty easily on my hands, for one thing, and for another, it could really influence the color of the painting above. Here you use whatever you feel comfortable with, experiment with different things until you find something that works just right. Once I've got my turtle sketched in with my nice light colored pencil, I go ahead and just start adding white to the canvas in order to give it a base coat so that the blue of the background doesn't bleed onto the painting as it comes together. I guess I wanted as little influence from the background color as possible, even though I ended up using some of that background color in the turtle itself. The process of painting this outline in did take me quite a bit of time, so it all depends on you, the time that you have, and the care you have for whatever specific project you're working on as to how much time you want to spend on getting a really clear outline. As you can see, it took me some time and I had to get multiple coats on there just to cover what I wanted covered. In all reality, I could have probably left some of that blue in there and it wouldn't have been a big deal, but I think my overly cautious brain went into overdrive. As you can see here, I went ahead and took some of that thylacyanine blue and made it a real light colored blue, and I began painting the shadow part of the turtle. Now I think this painting is a perfect example of how things don't always turn out exactly how you want them the first time through. You will watch me throughout this video paint and repaint this part of the turtle, I think a total of 3 times. Because I don't know everything, it does take a bit of trial and error to figure these things out, but I begin getting this color mapped in, at least I know where I want the shadow to be, and that's alright with me. It was kind of a mistake what I did, but it led me to the right solution. Toward the center of the shadow, I make it just a smidge darker so that I can get the idea of what it's going to look like in the end. Again, making mistakes can be such a good thing. They're not even happy mistakes, they're just mistakes. I map in the second fin, again trying to use my white and that thylacyanine blue to get some shadow in there. The underbelly was probably the toughest part for me. Again, you'll see me paint and repaint this several times throughout this video. But I kind of took a stab in the dark as far as how much blue I wanted in the underbelly of this turtle. I was wrong, but that's okay. I mapped in the shape and figured out exactly where I wanted everything to be. It's funny, when you present a finished painting to a person, all they can see is the finished product. All they see is the good things about what you've done. What they don't see underneath is the struggle that you went through, the blood, sweat, and tears you poured into this piece, literally mixing it in with your paint in order to get the color just the right shade. So all I can do when I get a compliment is sit back there and go, oh, you have no idea, in my brain. You have no idea the struggle this was. Well, now you lucky ducks get to see my own personal struggle with this sea turtle. This poor guy had such a rough day underneath my paintbrush. Next, I map in the shell with that white color again, just keeping it simple in order to cover everything up. I also decided on the white color because the turtle has a lot of those brown spots on its head and its fins, and even some on the underbelly. And I noticed that between these delightful spots, it's kind of a white shade. So my thought process was not only to cover up the blue underneath, but so I didn't have to go back over those lines with a white, very fine brush. I figured I might as well paint it all white and then go over with the spots, and that way that white line is already there and I don't have to go back over it. It's work smarter, not harder has never meant more to me than in this moment. And next, you guessed it, mapping in them brown spots. Due to the nature of the colors that I use, some of them map out a little thinner than I would like for them to, and that's the case with this raw umber. So essentially what I do is put the colors down, and then I go back over them once they are nice and dry in order to darken the colors and make them as opaque as I want them to be. And as I go here with the turtle's head, I definitely added in an undertone of brown to give him some shadow on top of his head. That way it's not a boring white stripe that's going around these spots. It gives the turtle's head some depth, and it also helped me with shading in the end around the neck. Then I begin adding his little chin there with the lines, just giving him some little detail lines using my fine liner brush. And ain't he just the cutest little thing? And I will say, after I finished painting this turtle and looking back at the reference photo, I did go off of a reference, but somewhere in translation, this turtle ended up a little smooshed. So he looks almost like a baby turtle in comparison to the photo that I copied. But you know what? That's fine. I map in the eyes with some of that thylacyanine blue and some black to make it extra dark. Because in that photo, that turtle's eyes are almost black. Don't forget the little highlight in the center there. Next, I begin to add the details on the front left fin. This was a mind-numbing process. If you look at the reference photo of this guy's fin, or any of his fins really, it is utter nonsense. There are just lines here and there. None of it makes sense because it's natural and nature likes to mess with you. Just throwing in these extra lines, extra spots, little extra jiggity jaggities that you didn't expect, because that's what she do. Nature's a beast. So this process took me a lot of time and a lot of concentration. I used the tiniest brush that I had to try to get these lines not to be so super thick. I had first started out with a lightish brown color, and I quickly realized that the lines on the fin were actually kind of a bluish color. Oops. So I started adding a little bit more of that thylacyanine blue, keeping it light and using just a smidgen bit of water on my paintbrush to thin down the paint a bit to make it a little more transparent. If you look closely at the finished product, you can definitely tell that it's not an opaque line that I've painted on these fins. Once I was pretty happy with the lines on the fin, I went ahead and began adding a little bit of shadow near the neck and some dark brown spots toward the bottom of the fin. I feel like those dots and spots really add a lot of character to this painting. It makes it feel a lot more real, even though it's utter incomplete nonsense. Like, if you were to compare the reference photo to what I've painted, they look nothing alike in the location of the spots, and that's okay. I went with more the idea than the actual reference photo, and for some things that works really well. For other things, not so much. The fact that it's a natural creature and not a particular specific fella, no one's going to notice that 1 or 2 or 10 or all of the spots are off. It's your painting. You do whatever you want. You add as many spots as you want or as few spots as you want, just as long as by the end of it you're happy with it because it feels real. By the time I got to the second fin here, I was feeling a lot more confident. It was beginning to come together in a way that I wasn't expecting it to. I was a bit discouraged at the beginning of this painting. I thought this might be a horrible tutorial to do. But by this second fin, I was getting kind of the hang of it. I was getting into the groove. I'm just adding spots all over the place. I stopped focusing so much on that photo reference and began just going, hey, you know what? This one works here. This one works here. Oh, that doesn't work there? Okay, we gonna paint over it and paint more brown spots. Next comes my second attempt at the underbelly. This poor guy has been through the ringer. Sometimes it's hard to see the color that's actually there because your eyes are processing and you see the color that it's supposed to be. You see the underbelly of this turtle and you think white because it is white when you look at it in full light. But this little guy is in the ocean and light is refracting in different ways and shadows are cast which change the color of the underbelly. So it's hard to look at that reference photo and not go, okay, that's just white and brown. At least maybe that's only my issue. Maybe other people don't have that problem at all, but I do have a little bit of trouble reading the colors sometimes just because I'm like, well, no, that's supposed to be this. If that happens to you, just keep trying. Keep mixing different colors of paint. Keep adding them onto that canvas because eventually you will stumble across the answer. And while by no means was this guy perfect by the end of this video, I was satisfied. Next, I went to the back fin and of course, you guessed it, more spots, more spots, all the spots, everywhere, spots, 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 spots. They're kind of the underwater giraffe, right? No. They're not. After that, I began shading the neck and the kind of back of the fin there. I added more of that raw umber and began putting some more like really fine details in there using that tiny little liner brush. Next, I began on the shell, and ladies and gentlemen, this shell was such a beast. In the reference photo, the shell is like bright orange. I don't know what was wrong with me that day, but I could not get this shell to just be bright orange. As I've said before, I like to dull down some of my brighter colors just a smidge by adding a little bit of raw umber, a little bit of black, something to kind of desaturate the naturally vibrant color of the paint. Because when a color is too vibrant, your eye knows that's not real. However, in this case, I think I should have just gone with bright orange and put that baby on that shell and just let it live. Because this poor guy went through coat after coat after coat of this brownish orange color, and man, it was just a beast. But turtle shells are cool, right? To imagine that is a natural part of an animal's body. They've got a built-in shield on their back. His armor class is naturally like 21. Sorry, been playing a little D&D lately. Of course, what do you do at the end? Say it with me, everybody. You add the highlights. I just took that same existing color and lightened it up with a little bit of white and started plopping it on that canvas. I did add a little bit of yellow to the mixture of white in order to imply that sunlight was hitting this turtle shell. I actually usually don't paint this chunky and was really satisfied with the look by the end of it. So thanks for watching today's video. Follow me on Instagram at Emmy's Art Stuff, and don't forget to check out my new website, you guessed it, emmysartstuff.com. where I have all sorts of prints available for you that come on all sorts of different objects, almost anything you can imagine, as long as your imagination is slightly limited. Anyway, I hope you had fun with this tutorial today. It was a blast to put together. Paint me something. I hope you have a wonderful day, and as always, stay creative.